Good morning. I'll call the meeting of the Stockbridge Cemetery Commission to order. And first, it's really good to see everybody. First up, approval of the minutes. Any discussion or comments on the minutes?
Motion approved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, great. May 24th. Okay, so the next thing, we're going to go through the following up. And the first one are the cemetery signs, the signs that we are putting up to inform the public about what we're doing. How are we doing with those?
I'd have to follow up with you on that.
Okay,
Been just a little busy and stuff.
sure. So last time we had talked about you were going to bring in a full-scale mock-up.
Yeah.
So what would it
And
take?
we're gonna get one made, so, yeah.
And we've already approved the wording, so could we have that by next meeting?
Yes. I will make sure it happens by the next meeting.
Right, great. All right. The next thing I wanted to check on is the private sewer line that's running through the cemetery. You know, we had talked about that. You and Hugh were going to check with water and sewer.
Yeah, well, this is gonna take a lot of research as far as what exactly can we do, can't we do? There's that one property connected, so.
Right.
Yeah.
What's the first step in doing that then, in terms of the research? What would be the first thing you guys would need to do?
I'll have to get Mike, what I'll do is ask Tony from sewer to come to the next meeting.
Oh, that's,
Lay out exactly what we need to do as far as the process.
yeah, that would be great. That would be
Yeah.
great. Okay.
Is Tony still in the building? He was here a few minutes ago.
He just left. Yeah, and I wouldn't want to jump,
Yeah.
I'm going to be guessing what to do. I will ask him to come prepared to discuss what are our options with that sewer line.
Yeah, I think that would be great. So I'll put that on the agenda next time.
Yeah, and I'll send him right after this meeting an invite to the next meeting with a request for that.
Okay, great, good. Which brings us to the tree warden review of the trees. What will it take to get that moving along? Is there a list or something that we can get added to that he's working from?
Yeah, so we're just looking for him to
Just-
go in and that one that he supposedly did with Chris, I believe it was, right? Which ones can we take in, get the hearing set? Because if they're not dead
Right.
or dangerous, then he can't take them down.
Oh, of course, but actually I think we'd gone a step before that and said, let's just have him review. There may be nothing that needs to be taken down. So we just want him to walk around and take a look. I'm not sure how.
Should the cemetery commission make that determination? So the tree warden's job is to determine if trees are unsafe, dying, and then hold the hearings if there's a request to remove a public shade tree. You're asking him to assess in what way? I'm trying.
This is really a holdover from months and months ago because Chris had raised questions about the trees. So I was following up on that.
Right.
So that's all I know about it, except that Chris seemed to feel that there were some issues there. So I think a few months ago you volunteered, let's just have the tree warden review,
All right.
take a look at things. So it's nothing specific and there may be no problem, but I just wanted to follow up on it.
Right, because Chris was the cemetery consultant. He had concerns that tree roots were toppling
Right.
stones, that things like that. So then it becomes, okay. So, right, I need to really get a meeting with the tree warden and the cemetery, our cemetery consultants, identify trees that are causing issues. And then hold hearings on whether or not those trees can be removed. And I understand there was supposed to be no planting. People have planted trees, other stuff there,
Yeah,
that if they've grown above 4 inches, it's a tree, and then we have to hold a hearing. So,
yeah.
yeah.
So you want to meet with the tree warden and Rich, you want to put the two of them together then, right? It sounds like you're saying.
Yeah, and it's just been summer between people not around and everything else, trying to get everything lined up.
Okay, well,
Now, can I ask a question about this?
Please do.
I mean, we're talking about removing trees.
Is the tree warden also the person we talked to about adding trees? Like, how do we add more shade trees?
If you guys want to add public shade trees, you could add public shade trees. I'll check the regulation as far as the approval process, but it's, if the cemetery commission has jurisdiction over the cemetery, so if you were to put in a line of trees, I believe it's just you guys. I don't believe it takes anybody else, but once you put up the public shade trees, once they've grown beyond a certain diameter, then you have to hold a hearing in order to ever remove them.
Yeah.
So,
Okay,
So I know we keep talking about removal, but that's really not what I'm emphasizing here. It was really more that Chris expressed some concerns. And it seemed the solution was to simply have him do a quick review to see if there is any concern. If there's no concern, we don't have to do anything.
Right.
So I'm not advocating for removing trees.
all right.
So it's really not about that. It's just, there was.
Yeah, because my understanding of that is the issue is not the trees themselves, their health or anything else.
It's the roots.
Whether or not the tree roots are impacting, which I'll have to follow up with him on whether or not he wants to even get involved in that. Because that's really not the tree warden.
Doesn't.
If it is the roots and stuff, then it's really not his
His call.
call.
I agree. I think maybe that's more something that comes up during the project that's being done, that we'll get some more information. The consultants can help us with that question. So there is one tree, one pine bordering the old section, that big limb came down. And you can see the gash, in the side of the tree. And Chris had thought about that whole entire tree coming down, but I don't know that it needs to.
It's healthy
Oh, it is healthy, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then I don't think it needs to.
because it's got to serve a public health or safety issue.
Right,
In order to be, there's, like I said, there's a whole criteria where the tree warden can just go in and say, yeah, like with that broken branch, can just remove it. Or if a tree is completely dead and now it's created a safety issue, you can remove it. But if the concerns are the roots could interrupt other things, that's where you have to have hearings and things
Right,
like
right,
that. I got a question.
Roxanne had a question.
No, I just was gonna comment, I think what Karen's talking about, and she just mentioned it, that there had been a tree where a limb had come down and that had been a public safety issue.
Right,
And I think what she's talking about is just ensuring that we don't have any other issues that we're unaware of.
right.
Being proactive in terms of just assessing the health of the trees, and then it's a whole separate issue with the roots.
Right.
that's, thank you. I was just getting ready to say, oh, let's just drop this, but my instinct is that we should not drop it, that we should have a review, not just in the old section, but in the new section as well, where there are trees bordering. And again, I'm not talking, I don't want him to look for problems. I just want him to see if there are any. So can that happen?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And then I have, the next thing is work on the cemetery garage, which I know is making progress, right? It's,
That is actually making progress. And that, so if he was here to talk a little more on it, it's just, yeah, they're cleaning it up.
yeah, and he's replaced the door, I think, right? And the sill, and yeah, so I'm very happy about that. And then the next thing is the tour policy. So I've made copies for everybody. The top page is the policy as what we assume is the final policy, and the second page is the application. This is the form that Pat redid. Thank you, Pat. So we just need to do a final review of it, I think.
Yep.
I was wondering, probably shouldn't mention it. I was wondering if we need to put something on the form to say, where you submit this or who you submit it to. You turn it in.
Well, most people are going to be getting the form online, so they would submit it online. Otherwise, I believe we talked about.
Submit it on, unless we,
Yes, we need, yeah. it's not-
right now, it's just a PDF.
No, I know, but it will be something that can be submitted online. So in fact, we need it not as a PDF
Right.
ultimately.
Well, ultimately, when we get our new website and the rest
But
of it,
you're gonna have a PDF interface for
we'll
submitting.
have submittals and we're gonna work on all that, yeah. But that's down the road. So right now, we're putting it,
Maybe just put at the bottom where to email.
yeah,
them.
we're working on it now, so it should be an email, yeah, the cemetery commission. please submit to the cemetery commission at blah, 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 or they can be dropped off at town hall. And then any of us would scan it and just send it to the cemetery commission.
So,
Do we want to put that on both?
Probably.
well, it says applications are available on the website, town website.
That's where they can get the application,
Right.
He's talking about submittal.
submitting it.
Yeah, I know, I understand what she's talking about. I'm wondering if we need to put that information on the policy. Yeah, maybe.
Right at the bottom of the form.
Right at the bottom?
I think on the application form itself, please submit.
Right, but she's talking about on the policy, which is the top form.
Got date submitted, but it would be nice to have some indication of where the person should
Yeah.
submit it.
No, obviously, yes, definitely on the form itself.
Yeah.
I thought you were asking about the policy,
I just didn't know if it should be in both places.
and I don't either. Would
I
it,
don't think so.
I,
The application, so people see if I'm filling out the application, I want to see on the application
Right.
where it goes.
right, and that's my thought too.
So should it say, please submit to the town clerk,
No, cemetery commission.
to the cemetery commission, but,
How do they do that?
and,
They're gonna have to email. We'll put the email there.
Put the email to the cemetery commission,
okay.
or can drop a hard copy at the clerk's office and Terry can scan it and send it to the cemetery commission. But we prefer to put the first one, which is just send it to you
Right.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
So take another moment and look at the policy itself. Everybody happy with that? You're probably right.
This one too.
Candace has just noted something, group activities can only take place during open hours, and she's suggesting we put may instead, which is probably more grammatically correct.
Why are you doing in other cases, it opens flexibility, I mean, are only allowed.
May is asking for approval.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, if we're talking about when they can be,
Yeah, so group activities are only allowed during open hours. Yeah, that's excellent.
I would say go with either to be or not to be.
That is the question.
so change it to say, are only allowed instead of take place.
Yep.
Yes. Okay, so can we go ahead and just approve these, with Pat's changes?
Motion approval changes.
Okay.
Second it.
All in favor?
The first choice is email to the ComCon
SEMCOM. SEMCOM.
or drop at the town clerks.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, okay, great. So,
And so do we know the actual email address?
oh boy, off the top of my head, I do not.
We'll make sure.
Yeah.
Can I just do a point of order? Isn't it customary that we reorganize in the first meeting of the fiscal year? I'd like to nominate you to be chairman again, if you're so willing.
No, I refuse, actually.
I mean, this is the first meeting of this fiscal year, right?
Oh,
And do we have a vice chairman?
We do not, but I would like to nominate Candace Curry.
All right, I'm a favor.
Does she accept?
yes, I will accept.
Gratitude. All right, make a note that we did that.
We have is that a motion? Nominate Candace as vice chairman and you as chairman?
Someone needs to.
Second.
You accept?
Yes, I did. Well, at first I rejected, but no, I do accept.
Okay. You're being
All in
funny.
favor?
All right.
Aye.
Great. Good. Okay. So, once Pat makes the corrections, then can we get it onto the website or do we have to wait? Okay,
Nope. Our website will remain active as is
okay,
until the day the other one goes live. And there's gonna be a whole process where behind the scenes, it'll go in a test phase where people will be able to access it, and we'll have people going in to take a look at it, make sure things work, and then when it's determined that it's ready to go live, then you go live with that one and you kill the other one. So in no time will we not have
Okay.
the website up, so, yeah.
What's the anticipated changeover?
Well, because everything was July 1st, I'm actually, and then I was away, actually, I started this morning with a reply back to them about moving forward, so.
So are changes to the existing still going to happen, updates still going to happen? Because I noticed that under the cemetery commission, I'm not listed.
We go in and change, we can change those ourselves. Those were not handled by outside. So just changing remember, if you see something on the website that's not correct, send it to myself and Teresa. Go in, and even Terry, we all can go in and just make adjustments and fix that way.
Okay.
So as is, so.
The selectmen's names or?
Yeah, I know. I've been meaning to huddle with Teresa. I don't know.
And Leonelle is up there instead of you.
Right.
We have to
Leonelle
keep
is
track of it all.
I just need to send all that to Teresa and just
Okay.
get it organized. So, all right, good. Okay. So,
Did you see that says it here too? It's the same wording over here on this one. So
Oh,
you
that-
might want to change that too.
So which one?
It's on the form, the can only, are only.
Oh, okay. In both places. Okay.
okay, so the next item is the next steps on the stone repair restoration. And Mike, you got that email that long email they sent us, right?
Yeah, and I've started to go, so
It's a lot to digest. I know. I actually have copies of it here.
yeah, so so there's a whole bunch of things we got to make sure of that we're not getting into bid splitting and other stuff breaking up the project. So we're going to have to go out and bid the whole project was the determination.
Well, this is,
They've sent,
Right.
right, what can be taken from it and created. And we also, I pulled up some other examples of some other cemetery restoration projects, RFPs that had gone out. And then filling in our own scope of work, we can go out to bid for the project. Of course, like I talked to Karen, this goes back to similar to what we ran into with Ice Glen, that if we go out and our consultants bid on it and somebody else gets it, then we don't have consultants because they can't, if once they bid on it, they can't act as oversight for the project. So the oversight for the project would fall back to Rich Atwell, this
well,
committee.
according to this most recent email, which I got over the weekend,
Maybe I haven't read that one yet.
it's very long. There's a copy down here. You can, go ahead.
I'll read it after. I don't want to try digesting it.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
We're just going to go over a little bit of it. But the bottom line is they seem to be saying they'll be the consultants on it.
Oh,
They will- they will manage.
switched theirs. All right.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. 'cause
I thought you'd be
they-
happy.
Yeah, that does, because me and Karen, we met with them, we went over it, we looked at the RFP, and then we talked with them about it, and the biggest fact was, we had run into the same issue originally with Ice Glen, where the original bids, we had to, if we had moved forward, we wouldn't have had anybody to oversee it, because we do we have the expertise? So that's one of those things, if you have the consultants, and you're gonna go out and have somebody actually do the work, this opens up the work to be done by more organizations, because now we have our consultants that would be watching and would be doing the oversight of it. And I was concerned that we weren't gonna have the oversight or the expertise to watch this type of work. So I haven't read that one then. I read the earlier ones.
Yeah, no, yeah, you were included on it. And they've also asked for a phone call with me, and I've set it up for tomorrow at 1:00. So the reason I know there's a lot of stuff to digest here, so I don't expect you to read it all now, but they seem to be suggesting that we break it into several pieces, and maybe different groups would do different pieces. They're also, let's start out with the cleaning. They're suggesting that we might be able, they would work with us to train volunteers to do some of the cleaning. Peter, you have done some of the cleaning, right?
Yes, it's something that I think, yes, regular people could do it with a little bit of training.
Yeah. I don't know how many people we would get, and I don't want to,
The nature of the training is both materials and method.
I would say yes. I mean,
So we don't want them using the wrong kind of cleaner and we want them to do counterclockwise, not straight and forward, up and down sort of thing.
yes, I think both, they would give guidance on.
Okay.
this is what he says. That would be a 1 to 2 week long and will be able to teach both local participants and get a lot done in terms of cleaning stones. Volunteers could continue to work after the training program was finished. So that would, encourage local. So I think that's something we might want to consider.
Yeah.
I would love to know what it costs to just have the professionals clean it periodically and then contrast that to, my concern isn't the volunteers the first year, it's the volunteers the fourth or fifth year. If it takes 2 weeks to train, is there, what kind of ongoing training is there so that people aren't like doing it wrong 3 or 4 years out?
You don't keep recleaning cemetery stones unless there's damage being formed within the stone by lichen and other plant materials. Ideally, you actually don't clean headstones in terms of preserving them. I just read this. And so I do want to sit down and talk with them and say, what stones really need cleaning? And they have identified some stones where lichen or some kind of plant material, microscopic plant material, is growing inside. And that's obviously going to cause a lot of damage. But if it's just for appearance, you don't want to keep cleaning.
Then it goes back to my question, that reinforces my question, which is just having them professionally cleaned where they need it, rather than, I don't have any problem with volunteers generally. It's just that these are irreplaceable and I want to make sure people aren't sort of cleaning for cleaning's sake years down the road because they were trained, quote unquote. I'm just bringing it up.
I have no way of projecting that far into the future. I don't think any of us can. I mean, I don't know. It sounds like you're saying maybe we shouldn't contemplate doing this because there might be a problem down the road. And it's just.
Say maybe we shouldn't be empowering volunteers to get their hands on the stones. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Okay.
It looks like in number 4, he's holding that out as an alternative that they would, that we could hire outsiders if we wanted to. Like, it seems like number 3 is if we do it with volunteers, number 4 is if we do it with outsiders.
Right. I think they're trying to give us as many choices as possible. So we have the option of hiring people.
Or just hiring down, right? They do.
No, we can't. I don't think we have that option.
So that's the issue.
Right, I get it.
If we go out with an RFP and they aren't the lowest bidder, they can't then become the consultants for the project. Once they've bid on it, that's it. So whether we wanted them in the role, which they now seem to have shifted to, which is more of being our oversight of this project. So then as we break up the pieces, say the pieces are, they estimate are under 50,000, we can just go out to 3 companies. And it could just be a masonry company like that could do some of the restoration now that we have a consultant that can oversee it. But before we were nervous that if we went out to bid and this other company got it, they're doing the work, but we don't have a consultant to oversee it. And by law, they can't because they've been on the project.
Yeah, I understand, Michael. This is very similar to what we're going through at Ice Glen.
Right.
Which is one of,
But we're trying to avoid that. So this actually avoids that, which gives us construction oversight and professional consultants. I call it construction oversight because that's typically what it's called for buildings and bridges. So this is giving us that same level now where they're, which I'm glad to hear.
Yeah.
Because I was nervous about that because I was like, do we have the expertise to watch somebody if we go out to bid and get this other company in and we're hoping they're doing the work the way we wanted it done. Instead now we can go out, like I said, say it's under 50,000, we can work with them and they could go out and get 3 quotes from 3 companies that they know. We'd take the low one, but then they'd oversee it. So now
as long as we're confident that the only people bidding on it are ones that are absolutely approved to do this kind of restoration work.
Let me just read you number 6, okay? Since it seems that this resetting work must be put out to bid, they were really hoping to do the resetting, but since it seems it must be put out to bid, we think that Stockbridge and the cemetery would be well served if we played a supporting supervisory role for this as well. And I think they're right. You really don't want to let unknown contractors loose in the cemetery. We could help you review proposals and evaluate past experience. Once a contractor was selected, we could be present at the start of work to discuss the tools and materials and techniques to be used and what not to use. We would initially work with the selected contractors on sample resettings to make sure they understood what needed to happen. We would make regular site inspections and be available for consultation as needed for unusual or difficult situations, and to perform a final inspection with town representatives.
Good.
Okay?
Yeah.
I think it's a good solution, I think, for us.
It's one we were leaning toward, but if you remember, they weren't at first.
We're not,
They
no.
wanted to bid on the project.
Yeah, they did.
And, yeah.
So,
Karen?
yes.
Just want to say I'm willing to volunteer, and then I do have a question about planting the time that had been discussed before, and when can that begin, and does that need to be supervised, et cetera, et cetera? What is the timeframe?
That's a good question. What do we people think? I don't see any reason why planting time is such an easy, benign thing. It seems to me it could start anytime, but
I've looked into it a little bit, and it seems like they're suggesting spring is what I've seen. I guess because it's wet.
so spring would be a good time to do.
To get going.
I
Yeah.
think I would suggest that you have a conversation with someone like Tom Farley about what the long-term, what it's going to take for the time to be, to take, as well as what the long-term maintenance of that looks like.
I would suggest that someone else have that conversation. I think it's an excellent idea, but I think I would like someone else to have that conversation.
What was the conversation? I didn't quite understand what you said, I'm sorry.
Just some of the professional landscape, I did talk to Tom, actually, and I don't want to put words in his mouth. Maybe we could have him come in and talk to us. It's just that it could easily take years, upwards of 10 to 20 years for it to actually take on the grounds like we're looking for it to do, and that the maintenance of this is much more difficult than grass. And we should just.
Okay, I'm going to, let's pause here. We're actually still talking about the restoration part. So let's move.
I
this
just was
discussion.
gonna ask-
No, I understand. I understand. And I went along with it. But I think before we wander too far afield, let's get back on this. Because I do have a conversation with these guys tomorrow. So I would like to get some guidance.
Right.
And, any questions that will need to be answered, let me know. I mean,
We should enter into a contract with them for the salt and work, either time material cost or base costs or whatever. So, we're gonna have to figure out that, which we can do for consultants and other stuff. We've already brought them on board. They've already done the feasibility. Now we just need to figure out what the cost is for that. Then that'll come off the top, and then that gives us what we have remaining, and then go out to do these projects and that.
so I'll learn what I need to learn, anything I can learn tomorrow. And I will tell them that we need to do the contract. And then I will have them get in touch with you for that part. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any questions I should be asking of them?
Well, didn't they tell us what stones should be cleaned?
Yes,
Okay, so that's in the report.
yes, it's in the
right?
report. Also, the stones that need resetting.
Right.
And one of the things I'd like to hear from them is what should we do first? And my sense is probably the resetting, because those are the things that they thought there were a couple of emergency items. So that would put out to bid. So,
What's going on with the sergeant stones? Are they working on that or?
no, but they've given us an evaluation. We haven't made any decisions about that yet.
I thought we talked about maybe doing the very first investigatory step.
We did talk about that, and I would love to do that, but,
And some of those can be done within them as consultants and figuring out what work needs to be done. And then go out piece by piece by piece, like they're proposing, and hire different people to do different projects with them overseeing it.
so can we move on? Because
We can move on
we
this.
can move on this.
No, now I think it's answered the questions that, yeah.
That you had.
Even having them, they could only assist so far in even developing the RFP if they were going to be
Right.
on it. So it's basically, we had to take their document and try to figure out, I know you started, I read that one. Yeah, you started pulling pieces from it and saying, all right, how do we develop the scope of work and stuff ourselves? And right, this is, yeah.
Yeah.
This is good news.
Okay.
It's really we can get this moving ahead a lot quicker now.
So then I will ask them also about the Sergeant Stones, if there's something we can get started with
Yeah.
that, the first part.
And then we need to identify which of the work and individual components that we're going to go out with. I might be able to join you for that one. Let me check right after the meeting, because if we identify every part that we identify that's under 50,000, we're just getting quotes. And then we can solicit the quotes from the companies we want to do it. Compared to going out to an RFP where, yes, you list, in an RFP, you list what their qualifications should be, but it still doesn't always mean, you can still end up with problems with that. Whether it was or the highway garage or whatever, if you get a company and they send over their C crew and.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully you will be able to join, so I'll talk with you afterwards.
And then if components are above 50, then we got to develop that scope of work. We got to develop the whole RFP and everything else.
Yeah.
Are we going to require DCAM certification? Not things like that. Those are all questions
Okay,
now.
so we can break
It's
it.
going to be components now, not this one big.
Yeah, you look much happier.
Trying to figure out how to do it.
I know, it was huge. It was huge. All right. Okay, so now we can talk about the time. Time is not more difficult to deal with than grass.
I don't want to look at it. Honestly, I think it might make sense for,
You said you talked to Tom Farley. Tell us what he said. Put words in his mouth, please.
he said that by far the simplest thing you can do is to maintain the grass and that everything else is much harder. Much harder to get it to take, much harder to maintain it, much harder to keep it looking good and weed it. I'm just saying what Tom Farley said, who is really good at gardens around here. I know nothing about gardening. I'm the first to admit it. I do not want to endorse his point of view. I'm just telling you that someone who knows more about gardening than me should talk to him.
Okay, absolutely.
Someone like him.
You do know there's a ton of time in there already. We're not planting.
There's such a joke there, Karen, a ton of time in the cemetery, but
Try to resist that urge. Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, go right ahead.
Was Tom thinking that this was going to be grown from seed? It's very difficult to grow from seed. It's a piece of cake to transplant and it goes crazy.
Okay.
And there's a ton of it already in there.
I have it in my garden. You put a little tiny piece in and.
Already you know more than me, but I think that it doesn't necessarily hurt to get, you guys have worked with it, you know better than me already then. If you're comfortable with it, I'm okay with it.
I mean, I think it's, okay, sorry, go ahead.
Well, and the other thing is, and I know when we were getting some feedback about the look of the cemetery, and I don't know why we didn't think of this before. We went out and looked at what's called trimmer guards. I don't know why we didn't talk about it before, but it's basically a piece that can have a rubber piece on the front of your trimmer. So at no time, and you can see YouTube videos where they're up against like historic like light poles, so they don't take the paint off of them. That the trimmer with the rubber part bumps up against whatever you don't want to be hit by it, but the blade, basically the thread is inside of this trimmer guard so that you can go into areas like our old section of the cemetery. And like I said, I don't know why I didn't think about it. And it just happened after we got those photos. I went, they got to make something like this. And I looked it up and it came up as trimmer guards that basically around historic other things that you don't want damaged, you put this trimmer guard in the front and they can just go up and bump the trimmer guard that has a rubber piece on it against whatever it is, but the string itself never touches it. Now, it will leave a little area around each one that may have to be, eventually at times during the year, maybe hand cut or something, but you could do a lot of that section with some good size trimmers with hand. And I even said to you, that might be something of even just mounting a couple with the trimmer guards that you just pull out when you're in the old cemetery.
Yeah.
Just throwing it out there as an option.
Yeah.
Although, I just have one point I want to make. I think the one question that the consultants might be asked about doing time in the long run, when time takes over an area, it's really low maintenance. You just mow it just like you do a lawn, but it doesn't grow tall and it smells nice. But anyway, the one question the consultants may be asked is there any downside to having time growing next to these antique stones? And if so, how much setback would you need? Maybe it's filled for an inch or two with pebbles or something. But you don't even have to worry about the trimmer guards at some point if you can get enough time growing, because it's never going to grow tall enough to have the weed whack.
Yeah.
I wish it were in my whole lawn. I've got part of the
It's
lawn.
becoming my whole lawn.
Is it have enough cover to keep the other kinds of weeds out? I mean, it doesn't need to be weeded?
It
It's
keeps,
thick.
it's very thick. It keeps most weeds out.
Once again, I'm not a gardener.
But I think that I just want to caution, I don't think, we're trying something different with the old section. And so it's going to evolve over the next couple of years. So let's not overreact when people are startled. I think that's one of the reasons why I'm pushing on the signs. I think we do need the signs out there to explain, to help people understand what's going on there. But I checked it after I got back from my trip because of this email that went back and forth with this woman, and it had been trimmed, it had been cut, everything looked fine. So I think.
So can you tell us a little bit about that? I'm unaware of what happened.
A woman wrote an email with photos saying, how dare you not take care of the cemetery.
Okay.
So Patrick answered her, I was away. Then I wrote a subsequent answer expanding and I believe correcting one thing that Patrick had said.
What was that now?
Are you serious? Okay.
Yeah, no, I mean.
You said that we had, you said that we had chosen to let it grow long to make it look historic, which was not at all what we were doing. So we're leaving it longer we're not mowing as often to protect the stone. So I wrote her an email back and also offered to meet with her or talk with her, and I've heard nothing back.
But in the short term, with trimmer guards and other stuff, we can still get in there, maintain it so it looks nice while we figure out how to get the time and the other. Because I know he was very concerned that people would come back at the highway saying, you guys aren't taking care of it. So they'll use push mowers in that area, and then they'll use weed whackers with trimmer guards until we get time or whatever in place. But, the main thing we were told is not having specifically the trimmer
Right.
hitting the stones anymore. So we found a solution to not do that anymore.
So I have a couple comments. Maybe the purpose wasn't to restore the historic look, but it certainly does do that when
We had this conversation.
when it's longer, yes. And time, if you have a bare patch and you put time in, yes, it's going to take a decade for the time to spread, perhaps, depending on your soils. But in this case, at the cemetery, because it's already there, if we can spot more plugs of time, it will eventually take over. And there'll be less grass to mow. And so as it grows, it would be sparser looking, and it would be really quite attractive to have that look, I think. And
Especially when it blooms.
yes, and it smells delicious, and yeah.
And every
So-
time you walk over it,
Yeah, it's lovely.
it's heavenly.
Yeah, so, it's when starting from a bare patch and adding time, when you end up with things like crabgrass and other weeds that you don't want. But I think we would recognize that that's not the look we're looking for. And so I think it also makes sense, I presume that email happened before Memorial Day, right?
Yes.
Somebody was trying to get out there for Memorial Day. So it makes sense that maybe we propose, okay, you do mowing before Memorial Day in this section and perhaps before Veterans Day or
It
something.
was after Memorial Day, actually.
It was in June.
It was in June.
Late
But
June.
then Hugh went in before July 4th to cut, so.
Okay,
that was, yeah.
so, it's okay to do a mow a couple times a year versus, 12 times a year. I mean, I think that's a perfectly fine way to maintain the cemetery.
Yeah, I just, I think it's good to have these conversations. I just want to caution all of us, I don't think this is as much of a problem as we're all talking about it. I really don't think it's an issue. Hugh is very sensitive about this kind of stuff, and he's also sensitive to the old stones. We get the signs up, we explain to people. I went to the select board meeting and did some explanation. We have this meeting, we can put something on the website. I think let's just not overreact when people get upset about it. We need a ton, all right? And we definitely need to find out more about what are good plantings for that. I agree with you. Okay, I just want to be aware of the time in all senses of the word. There are two more things on my agenda. One is bylaw revision. I wanted to start the bylaw revisions. So I have copies of the bylaws. I pass those down. We're not going to finish them today. I thought we could just start and look at them. And I'm hoping to get to green burials, but we might not.
You want to?
I want to start this now. I'm hoping if there's a special town meeting. Patrick, what are the odds of a special town meeting this year?
Don't know. We've left it to a discussion of the highway rework at the intersection, the red line intersection. And I haven't heard about what the next step on that is yet.
Okay, yeah. Well, anyway, I thought we'd start this now. Maybe we won't be able to bring them before the town until next year, but we start now. And let's start with the very, very first one, which is 1.1. And it says what the cemetery commission will consist of. And as we've talked about, this has been a bit of a problem for us. And Michael and I also talked some more about it. And there are several people on this list who are actually employees. And so it's an awkward sort of thing. They're voting members and yet they're employees who may be asked to do something they don't particularly want to do. And
Just one question for Michael when he comes back in. In Article 6 under miscellaneous, the first section suggests that bylaws can only be amended or repealed at the annual town meeting, not at a special town meeting. I don't know if that's the case, because we had that one where the guy from 37 Air Lake had proposed a bylaw change at a special town meeting. I don't know how we could do that with section 1 of Article 6, but I would like to have clarification before we suggest that it might be at a special town meeting.
okay, that's fine. As far as I'm concerned, this can wait till next year. I just wanted to get started on it, but I think it's a good point. So Michael has suggested that we actually say that cemetery commission shall consist of 5 members appointed by the select board. And you can include a select board member can appoint themselves, but that really just keep it that simple. And then our quorum is only 3. Poor Terry doesn't have to keep legging in here
I think that's great.
I think that makes sense.
Does it make sense that everybody's comfortable with that?
So it'll just be 5 members.
So my question for you is this, is 5 give you enough help? Because, we're talking about a lot of tasks here, they got the time planters and the folks talking to the stones, there's a lot of tasks. Is 5 enough?
I do wonder about that, actually.
Well, the other question is, are there 5 people or more willing to be on the cemetery commission? So, that's another question.
That's the flip side.
Well, I would hope that, actually, I would hope that the Board of Selectmen.
Stay on it, right?
Depends, I mean,
Well, I would actually hope that, ideally, the select board would either appoint themselves or appoint someone or basically it's one person.
I'm sure you'd have a lot of interest.
Do you actually think we would have, if we had 6 members, we'd still only need a quorum of 3.
What do you think? No, you gotta go with odd
You
though.
got to go 4, that's right.
And my question is, are you thinking 1-year terms? Because why aren't we doing 2 or 3-year terms like we do for everything else?
This doesn't say anything about terms. I don't know anything about terms. This
Well, I'm
says
bringing
nothing.
it up. If you're gonna do a 5-member board, then I would say 3-year terms so that you're doing 1 or 2 appointments a year. And same with a 7-year. Let's get people so that they've got the experience and,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there, if we take the specificity
Right.
out of this, do we run the risk of not having these people like the highway superintendent and the,
Yes, we do. But we don't want the highway superintendent as a voting member because he works for the town. And the commission may vote to have him do something, have the highway department do something he doesn't particularly want to do. For
The
example,
selectmen work for the town as well.
well, that's true.
and actually any volunteer actually ends up being an employee of the town for
Where's
that
Michael?
conflict.
Yeah, but it's, I have no idea.
Right?
But it's,
That, Pat?
Anybody that's a volunteer ends up being an employee of.
Special
Right,
town
that's
employee, right?
true.
well, it's different though. Yes, technically, but Rich Atwood is paid by the town, Hugh is paid by the town. I think there's a bit of a potential conflict there. The highway commission, the cemetery commission could vote to never mow in that old section. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. But let's say we did. And then they've got the highway guy saying, that's not what I want, and here he is, he's a voting member. There's This is Michael's suggestion, and it sounded like a good one to me.
It's a good
But,
one.
you know, I want to though emphasize that every employee of the town, I guess with the exception of the select board, works for Michael. So,
Right.
you know, fire chief, police chief, you could argue strong chiefs, whatever. But as long as we're setting this, the board, the purpose of this board should be to set policy so that the town administrator and the employees of the town can implement the policy, right? So, you know, I think that the point you're making about, maybe traditionally the cemetery person was sort of, you know, I think that the way people worked together in the past was a little bit, you know, more insular and, you know, personal maybe than, you know, I mean, I tend to agree with you though, that we don't need to identify in the bylaw who is going to serve because it just limits us, you know?
Well, that was Michael's point. It just totally limits. You know, it doesn't mean, Pat, we can't have you here and you can't report back to Laurel Hill. But when you're not part of Laurel Hill anymore, then what happens, you know? So
What would you think of,
Like after December 31st.
is it, yeah, we'd still like to keep you on the
Well,
commission.
I can't see that, because you don't have to be on the Laurel Hill board to be the Laurel Hill rep as far as Laurel Hill goes.
there is something to be said about traditions and where Mary, what was it, Goodrich Hopkins or Hopkins Goodrich? Yeah, rode her horse through the cemetery and was so upset in 1853 and it started the whole like civic improvement tradition in the whole country with what she did and all had to do with our cemetery. I could see honoring that tradition by maybe having 6 members appointed by the select board, 2 a year for 3-year terms, plus 1 appointed by the Laurel Hill Association, just because it's been that way for 175 years.
Except that we had a gap where Laurel Hill wasn't sending anyone and I had to work very hard to get someone sent. And so,
If we had a gap for 2 or 3 years, and that's in our recent history, that's fine. I'm talking about a tradition that spans nearly 2 centuries.
but so, and what does it do for us in the present and going forward? I
It
mean,
honors our forefathers.
I would be happy to find another way to do it, but I don't really want to tie up the cemetery commission with that.
I have a question, Karen.
Yeah.
What is the purpose of changing this? What is it you're?
We are trying to simplify who is on the commission and reduce the number. We have, at this point, we are technically a 9-person commission. So getting to quorum is never an easy thing. And the select board is very busy and
How many times have you lacked a quorum though in the last 3 years when I was in office? I don't know if it ever happened.
It did happen, yeah. There was a meeting at the cemetery.
One time?
One time, yeah. Well, you say the last 3 years, but this commission really hasn't been meeting except for about the past year.
We were meeting.
Well, not that much more. I mean, once I took over as chair, we started meeting regularly, but before that, we didn't meet for 3 years.
More regularly, but we had been meeting before. I was just curious. I thought this is.
I know we did not meet for 3 years because I remember writing an email to Chuck Gillette saying we need to meet. So we didn't meet for a long time. But this would open it up, frankly, to people who aren't on Laurel Hill, who have other interests. It would broaden the pool of people we can pull from.
This broadens it by having 6 folks that the select board.
And we have to have a 4-person quorum every single time.
So they would 4 folks that the select board appoints. I don't care. It's still a flexibility to find the 4 best candidates, of which I'm sure the chair will have a lot of insight into. I'm just not ready to, just because of a problem we might have had over a year or two, take tradition that has been the way it's worked for literally.
I'm going to be very honest with you, Patrick. Laurel Hill no longer contributes anything to the cemetery.
Okay.
Not so far, not in any way, shape or form, not in many, many years. I've been on the commission for 5 or 6 years at this point. They've done absolutely nothing for the past 5 or 6 years.
Have you reached out to them and had that conversation?
I have.
Had board members meetings. I want to just, well, what do you think, Pat? I mean, you know, you've been on board
Well, I was
for 40
actually
years
on
and
this
you're here.
commission, oh my God, I don't know how many years ago for a short time. And, yeah, it's been pretty quiet.
Commission has or Laurel Hill's
No,
participation?
no, well, the commission.
Yeah, it's really,
It's been sort of a non-entity for
Absolutely.
a while.
yeah.
And it seems to be very vital right now. And it's actually quite surprising to me to see exactly how extensive and important some of these topics are that get discussed here. And the more people in town that know about it, I think that would also be an education to them too. So anything that is going to make this commission be more robust, I'm all for.
That was very nicely said.
So whatever, tack is taken, I would be supportive.
Well, I think you need to remember that it has to be voted in as a bylaw change by the voters, so it's ultimately it's up to the public.
Any other comments or thoughts?
I'm all for simplifying it to 5 members appointed by the select board. And the select board and us as a commission can look at this, say, okay, let's talk to Laurel Hill. Let's, see what the highway superintendent wants to, that person can still be here, right? But it's not necessary.
I think it would, from Laurel Hill aspect, I think it would be nice to continue that. How insistent it should be is another question. But it's,
Right. One of my concerns is if we're going to drop the number down, and I think we need to drop the number, then each member needs to be as participatory as possible. So let me finish. So my concern about assigning one to Laurel Hill, first of all, there are many other committees and commissions in town, historic preservation, that sort of thing,
I mean, even
Why
like the
Laurel Hill?
Stockbridge
Yeah.
Land Trust.
Right. I mean, so you could theoretically pull from all of those people. So why Laurel Hill, except for the tradition?
Because in 1853, the woman founded the civic improvement like movement for the entire nation, because history matters in this town, and it's been that way for a long time. And I'm sorry, I think that you're making such great points on the highway folks and the employees, but it is not the same as what our centuries old traditions are. And I get it would be more efficient perhaps to not take a look at those. But before I'm going to support this, believe me, I'm going to go and try to get on the agenda at Laurel Hill and have a nice long conversation on this. And, I just feel like.
Patrick, I'd prefer that you not do that until we have a conversation as a commission to talk about what it is we want to ask Laurel Hill to do.
I said before, I would support it. I'm just saying, I don't need to support it. I'm only one vote here,
Right.
But I'm just saying. I think
Okay,
it's.
Patrick, I want to point out something. Laurel Hill used to put in sidewalks. They used to put in street lighting. They used to dig culverts or have culverts dug. They themselves were not doing it.
Used to do trash.
They used to do trash. I mean, we don't expect them to do that anymore. And I don't think Laurel Hill has the resources to help support the cemetery, nor should they. It's a town cemetery. They shouldn't be putting in street lighting either. It's just, yes, it was wonderful when they did it. It was necessary when they did it, but it's not necessary now.
It's a board, Karen. It's not expected to do any of the things you're just enumerated. It is a board. It's a board that has representation. It is a tradition. And I think before we just sit around and blow up a tradition, we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it, including the people who are tasked with finding the person to serve on this board. And if you don't agree with that, that's fine. But I'm telling you what my position is. So.
Okay, and I'm telling you what mine is. I want if we're only going to have 5 members, and I think it makes a lot of sense.
Let's have 7. You are advocated for us expanding the board 2 months ago to add Peter to it.
And you argued against it very convincingly, so I backed down. So now you're making the case to make it larger again.
I'm not at 7, it's 9 now. I'm saying we could bring it down to 7 and we would be making it smaller. We don't have to bring it down to 5.
I don't want to make it smaller. I want to make the quorum concern. And I also want to open it up so that we bring in some people who aren't the highway department, who aren't Laurel Hill, who aren't necessarily, people who have some new ideas and some new ways of looking at things. A different set of expertise and skills. It could be really valuable. I think I hear you. I really do. I hear you.
I spend a lot of time recruiting people for boards, Karen. I really do. I have, Roxanne has done it too. It's
But you're making a different case. Your original case was about tradition, not the difficulty of filling the
Let me
position.
just finish my thought, and then, I don't mean to, this doesn't have to be adversarial, all right? It could be this is a good idea, I just haven't thought about it, all right? And anybody who knows me will tell you that sometimes I have to think about things. My process is I kind of, go through a process and maybe eventually I'll get there. But, just thinking it through, that when we're recruiting people for these boards, it's often really helpful to paint it in the superlatives, if you will. It's hard to find people to serve in these boards sometimes. It is. And part of what makes Stockbridge special is part of the challenge and opportunity in terms of how it takes to recruit people. And the things that make Stockbridge special are often little quirks of history. We're just.
Okay, Patrick, hold on, please. I think I hear what you're saying. I think I don't want to go too far down that road. And I just want to remind you, I had a very difficult time getting Laurel Hill position filled. And if Pat weren't available, I don't think there'd be anybody here from Laurel Hill. And I'm very grateful that she's available because she's a wonderful member. But I don't think it would be filled if Pat was.
Wasn't that all the point I was making? And I won't finish it because obviously you know.
But that is my point.
My point is, don't interrupt me,
If we
Karen.
insist on keeping Laurel Hill in this as a requirement, we may have this problem down the road. Pat won't be willing to do this forever.
It's not about the people. These are institutions that have gone on for centuries, too. It's not about the people, Karen. It is about the tradition.
It's not about the traditions, Patrick. It's about getting this stuff done.
That's where we disagree.
I have one more comment to make. I think it's worthwhile to think about why, when this was written, why they selected these particular people. Town clerk keeps cemetery records. They're responsible for that. The cemetery consultant, very similar, keeping records. Highway superintendent, because our highway department does the maintenance there. So, they're directly involved. And Laurel Hill, obviously, because of beautification, I would think, when this was written, it was a while ago. All the greenery, the shrubbery
The
that
hedges.
you want to replace. I mean, who knows, maybe way back when, Laurel Hill.
Yeah, Laurel Hill paid for.
Yeah, they did.
Exactly.
And
So
we
I think
have
it's
in the
worthwhile to think about
fairly
why
recent-
this happened and why it was set up this way.
And I'm not sure those needs are still the same. The highway department, and I mean, as you pointed out, Patrick, very well, everyone except for the select board works directly for Michael. So if we have a question or an issue, we can ask that person to come in.
No problem with the highway department, as I said.
Right.
Changing it from that perspective.
Well, why don't you just said that sometimes you need time to think about something. So why don't you think about it and we can talk about it at the next meeting?
Yeah, I'm not going to change my mind on this one, but I will think about all you like. I think you have a great idea on all the town employees. I'm not going to support changing Laurel Hill until we talk to Laurel Hill. We can invite them in to make a presentation. They do have a president and a vice president and a board.
A presentation on what? I mean,
Look at, I think that a presentation on whether this relationship, specifically this relationship that is tied to their founding, is important to them. And if it's not.
well, perhaps we can ask Pat to carry that water for us. Perhaps you could at least do some exploratory asking. Would that make any sense or does not make sense?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay.
I think that the changeover in personnel and stuff that happened with Laurel Hill has a lot to do with why the gaps occurred. So that's an issue for Laurel Hill. But I'm sort of on the fence here, but I can agree with some of what Patrick is saying, that I think that tradition would be nice to carry forward for historical purposes. And because of the history with Mary Hopkins Goodrich, there is a strong reason why Laurel Hill should want to continue to participate. And the person that participates does not have to be on the board. In fact, Helen Piggott was on the Cemetery Commission.
I worked with her.
for years and years.
Yeah.
And she was not on the board.
Yeah, I worked with her, yeah.
And also
I think would be very nice for the history of the Cemetery Commission to continue that tradition.
You know,
I'm not,
right.
you know,
I hear that it's nice, but I'm not, who does that benefit other than the people who are on the commission who happen to know about the history? I mean, how does that actually benefit the functioning of the cemetery and of the work that we need to do
I
here?
think should be the responsibility of Laurel Hill, and they failed to keep that interest maintained. And so that's, I don't think, a reason that the Cemetery Commission should abandon that tradition necessarily. I think that it's something that is the responsibility of Laurel Hill to make sure that the person that is selected is up to the task.
we can also structure it similar to the Stockbridge Bowl Stewardship Commission, where the organization nominates the person and the person is approved by the select board. So it creates
Another option is to have alternates.
I'm sorry.
Alternates,
Oh, alternates.
so that alternates, if you don't have a quorum, the alternate then can vote.
I mean, the select board could be the appointing authority though, for every member, similar to SBSC. But we ask these stakeholder groups to put forth a nominee because it's a sign of, respect. And it does help keep people involved in what the issues are before that panel. I think there's a lot of ways to do this. Let's think about it.
Yeah, I think
that alternate's a great.
I think an alternate's a great idea. Yeah, and I think.
Not voting members, like alternates?
Alternates is like Conservation Commission, the alternates can vote if they don't have a quorum. They can actually cast.
Yeah, but I mean, it's usually.
The zoning board is that way.
Up to snuff. Pardon me?
The zoning board is that way.
Yeah, I mean, that would be, and you're right, so the select board would do all the appointees and then if.
But we're not saying that Laurel Hill would be designated as an alternate. We're just saying that we would have 7 and 2 would be alternates or the.
No, I don't want to say 7. You're saying 7. I'm not up with 7 right now. We haven't discussed that.
We're still discussing, Patrick, that's all.
Yeah, we're still discussing. We haven't decided on 7.
Well, you could do 7 with 2
Let's
alternates. That's another option. But you have to remember, this got to pass the public vote.
It's not, before that, it also has to pass the select board. The select board puts things on the warrant. Let's just make sure that we understand that you're advising on this question, you're advising the select board controls the warrant and approves the warrant that goes before the voters. So let's not create an expectation that it's 5 or 7 or whatever. Jamie and Chuck have as much to say about that as anybody in this room, so let's just kind of.
We do need Jamie and Chuck at some point to say something.
Yeah, well, they say we'll put it on our agenda at the select board when we're ready.
That sounds like a good solution. Yeah, all right.
Or they can come, they should be at the meetings here. They can come to these
both
meetings.
work.
Oh, I know.
Well, Jamie's not working in the summer, is she?
It's not up to us to discuss whether she can make this meeting. Let's schedule a night like every other meeting. Seriously, why don't we just start doing it on Monday nights? That's free. If that's your concern, I know Chuck works. I don't know what Jamie is doing right now, but I know Chuck works every single day. And.
Is he going to want to do another night meeting? He didn't want to do it.
How can I know that, Karen? It's not for me to say. I'm telling you, that's why they're not here.
Speculation, but you're suggesting we do something. So I'm asking you, how likely is it that will work? One reason why I have them during the day is that we have so many town people who have to attend the meetings, that's one reason why we do it now. So to make it easier for them. So they're not working extra hours that they don't need to work. Once we have a 5-member appointed by the select board and they're not all town people, we could certainly meet in the evenings. But you seem to be suggesting that we should meet in the evening. That would solve the problem of Jamie and Chuck attending.
I didn't suggest any of that. I said that there may be an explanation why they're not attending.
Oh, no, I'm not criticizing them for not attending. I'm just saying it's hard to hear what it is. You're saying that we need to hear what they have to say. We can't do that because they're not able to come to the meetings apparently. So.
Was what I said not clear?
Yes, it was not clear, not to me.
Well, I can maybe clarify. What Patrick is basically saying is that any proposal for a bylaw change has to go to the select.
To the entire select board.
The entire select board, and based on what is put on the warrant. And so in that case, ultimately, they will have a say.
Absolutely. I don't have a problem with that.
I'm just saying,
I'm just starting I'm starting the process now so that we can actually have something in hand by May. So we don't have to make any decisions today at all. We just wanted to start the process. I'd like to continue the process at every meeting in order so that we will be in shape by May, so that we'll have done all the steps. And you can put the kibosh on it at the select board level if you want to at some point. So, I mean, but we need to have these discussions. There are other bylaws that need to be addressed as well. The whole concrete liner thing. I mean, there's just a lot of things here. So I want to start working on it now so that we can do it calmly and.
we got sort of stuck on number one. What other ones do you want to like talk about?
All of them. Michael has some concerns about 1.2, about residents and taxpayers. He's concerned about some of the aspects of that. So I mean, I think that's why I wanted to have them, I have it on the agenda every month and we just go through it and talk about it as we're doing now and argue about it and go off and think about it and come back with better solutions. You know, working together, we will do that.
It might be helpful if we could get the sort of bullets as to what the concerns are. So I would love to just sort of, think about what the issues are before we get presented in real time that.
Are you suggesting that I do that?
Anybody who wants to change the bylaws, I don't care who does it. I'm just saying.
No, you're suggesting that I come up with a bolted list of what the concerns are?
Well, you said 1.2, there's some concerns. So is there a proposal of how we're going to change it?
Michael's not here, but he has got concerns which he articulated at our last meeting. So rather than my spending time trying to come up with a bolted list, why don't we just ask Michael at the next meeting what his concerns are and it has to do with language.
It's fine with me.
I mean, I just thought we would take them one by one and hash them out a little bit. We can go back to this one too next time, so.
Okay.
All right, and I'm sorry, I don't think we're going to get to green burials. It is 11:17 and my goal is to never be more than an hour, so. But I would like to also start discussing green burials, so I'll keep that on the agenda as well.
Any top line issues before we adjourn? Just like a minute.
Is there a way that maybe in each meeting that we talk about put on the agenda to talk about a particular
Absolutely, we can do that.
that might help?
Yeah,
Is to, like the next meeting to take 1.2 and find out
right, what the concerns
what
are.
all the concerns
Right,
are.
right.
And then discuss those and so if we tackle them one at a time.
That's exactly what I wanted to do. So hang on to this sheet because I don't want to make any more copies. But we can do them one at a time. And we can leave the first one for now and revisit it after we've gone through some more. All right, does that make sense to
That might
everybody?
make more sense once we've
Yeah,
discussed.
I think so. And gives all of us a chance to think about it and come up with better ideas. I mean, this is just a starting point. So, great. So our next meeting is August 26th. Just make sure.
That would be a Friday.
No, that isn't it then.
I only know because Laurel Hill Day is August 27th.
Oh, right.
A biggie.
August 23rd. Our next meeting is Tuesday, August 23rd.
Yes. Okay.
So motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, all in favor? Thank you all.